Hello and welcome to Let's Talk. I am super excited to introduce to you my sweet friend Amber and Liz that are going to be connecting with you all tonight and talking about element 22. As I was going through this and kicking everybody off for tonight, I actually reopened my life book to that page and I was like, dang, this has a lot of good stuff in there. And I was reading what I had wrote before and then adding to what really matters most. And Amber, I think you're in that season of your kids, two of them getting married, two of them graduating, one from high school, one from college, and really connecting to your family and what matters most. And so I'm excited to hear you ladies on element 22 and what you have to share.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So happy to have Liz Jensen as my co-host. Liz has been coaching. Oh my gosh, Liz, how long have you been coaching? A dozen years or so?
Oh, 13 plus years, yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? And I love this element, and it's all about the well-being chart. And as we were preparing, I don't know if this happened to you, Liz, but I found myself assessing my own well-being where I am right now in this really busy time of life. Did you find yourself doing the same?
Yes, for sure. And isn't it amazing how Optavia helps us not just move forward with our health, but in all aspects of our life? I love that, how I just started thinking about all areas of my life and where I'm at. So I'm excited to dive into this today.
100%. Yeah, so let's dive in. So one thing that I love about Optavia and Dr. A's life book is how he helps us assess. And we've come up with an analogy that we've probably heard before, but what house are you currently living in? Now, there's the broken house where you're just resigned and hopeless. You're just like, well, I might as well just give up. I'm never going to be enough. I'm never going to get the hang of this. I'm never going to figure it out. Have you ever felt like you're in that broken house in your life, Liz?
Oh, for sure. Like physically thinking that my body was broken, like nothing's gonna work, or even like financially, like I'll never figure this out. So in all areas of my life, I think I've felt that way at some time or another.
Definitely. And that's where Jared, my husband, and I felt as we were just first starting in Optavia. We felt like we were victims of our circumstance. Our identities had been stolen. We had all of this debt racked up in our name that we had not ourselves incurred. And it just kind of felt like we couldn't catch a break. It was like we were literally broke and broke. We were in the broke house. I mean, that's where we were living. And Optavia came into our life in such an amazing time because we were so stuck in that victim mindset and in that fixed mindset. So I don't know if anyone else can relate, but let's go to the fine house. Liz, tell us a little bit about this one.
I love this because when I think about that transition from the broken house to the fine house, I literally think that someone is just giving you a hand, like to move out of that. And I remember when I first like moved from that phase into the fine house, and it felt pretty awesome to tell you the truth. Like I felt like, okay, I've made it. And I love this picture because probably the house that we lived in before this looked a lot like this house, and I thought, wow, like I feel like we've stepped up in the world, but it's so easy to kind of get comfortable there, right? And feel like you're just kind of stuck and you're not moving very much in your life. But I love like these comments here that you have on this picture. I love myself just the way I am. Like you get content, right? Or you start making excuses of why it's okay just to stay where you're at.
Yeah, and there's two sides of that phrase. I love myself just the way I am. There's the side of it where you are accepting yourself and loving yourself and ready to treat yourself really well. And you are just happy with like whatever has been given to you and ready to go with it, right? And then
Mhm.
there's this other way where you're like, well, it's not going to ever change anyway, so I might as well just like resign here. I might
Yeah,
as well just accept it and know that it's never going to be different. And I might as well just stay right here because I'm comfortable.
exactly. And I find myself often like when I've been in stage looking backwards. At least I'm not where I was. At least I'm better off than I was. At least I'm healthier than I used to be. Like I look to the past so much more, like when I'm in this fine state.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the third option? We got the broken house, we got the fine house.
Let's move
The
to the
next
dream
one,
house.
the dream house. And, a lot of people, they think, oh, I don't need the big mansion. I don't need a Ferrari. And honestly, like, I don't either. But this is more of a conceptual dream house, okay, where you are alive, you are thriving in your life, where instead of just, I'm going to resign myself, it's, I love myself enough to take care of my body, to be a good steward of my finances, to be a good steward of my mental health, where you're ready to go, you're open.
Yeah, I think it's also like really being excited about what's next, always wanting to move forward and progress in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the growth mindset. That's where you're ready to take the clay that's been given to you and to mold it in a way where you can move forward. You can create the best life for yourself. And I someone put in the chat, like, I don't need the Ferrari. I want it. You know what? If you want a Ferrari, that's great. Like that's the point. What is it for you? What is the dream house mean to you personally, with your body, with your mind, with your finances? Like, what is that dream? Have you allowed yourself to continue dreaming?
And I saw someone in the comment that said, "I'm in the moving truck now." So it's fun. One thing I love about our program is we really teach about one healthy habit at a time. It's not jumping from the broken house right into the dream house and thinking that, we've arrived and we're going to settle in, but it's about like those small baby steps moving forward. And I love that.
Yeah, and it's not always where you're at necessarily. It's where am I going? Like,
Mm.
what journey am I on? What road am I traveling? Am I traveling backwards to the broken house, or am I traveling towards the dream house? Yeah, I love that. Betsy said paying off debt, yay me.
Yeah.
Right? Those steps right there.
And a lot of times I think that it's so normal that we often do slip back. Maybe we go back to the broken house, right? Maybe we start gaining our weight back or go back in debt. And that sometimes is part of the journey, learning from our mistakes and learning what we want to do different next time.
100%. Well, let's throw up our poll if we have that ready. Which house most represents your body, mind, and finances right now, where you're at? Broken house, fine house, or the dream house? Go ahead and cast your vote. And, just kind of where you're at right now. Sometimes Dr. A says current reality is an acquired taste. Sometimes we don't want to really assess where we're at right now. But it's okay. Wherever you're at, that's where you're at. So, like I said, when we started Optavia, we were in the broken house, and then we spent many years in the fine house as well. And, we got to that point. I remember specifically at our very first convention, and we went to Arizona. We drove there. We had another coach get in the car with us because we
I
needed.
was in the back seat with you, Amber.
No, you've definitely been in my back seat, Liz. And we got there, and Dr. A got up there, and Dan Bell, and they started talking about dreaming. They started talking about, are you ready to move to the dream house? Like, what do you want to accomplish? And that was a huge turning point in my life, me and my husband's, and just being able to dream again is so huge. So, okay, let's get the results up here. Okay, okay. So maybe a quarter of you just in the broken house. I love that you're like, I'm here, okay? And maybe once you can say where you're at, you can decide to if you want to move out of it. We got about 65% of you in the fine house. That's pretty common. And 10% of you are like, I'm in the dream house, baby. So that current reality can be really good to see where you're at, right, Liz?
Yes.
So true.
I think that's the first step, just consciousness, like owning where you're at and just being conscious of it.
100%. So, what does well-being even look like? How many of you have read this Element 22 before? And, sometimes we start doing the comparison game. And a lot of times that does, to Liz's point, happen in the fine house. Are you comparing yourself in the past? Are you comparing yourself to others? Well, my house looks like my neighbor's and it's better than that broken house. And at least I have blah, 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 right? And it's not right or wrong if you're in comparison. It just is. Just taking that assessment and being like, oh, okay, I'm kind of in comparison right now, just seeing where you're at.
Yeah. I was thinking today that this is very much like living above the line or below the line. So often we visit below the line, but when we notice that we're living there and we're staying there, that's a good clue that we're moving backwards. We're moving back into the broken house. So it's just good to just be aware of it for sure.
Yeah. And versus the creation game. And so creation, that's that growth mindset. That's where you visualize what you want. You go, okay, I can see where I'm at. I can see my current reality, but where do I want to go? Like, what's my trajectory? And maybe that's the best version of you. And instead of at least, it's at best. What could I do when I'm at my best?
Mhm. One thing that I think is really helpful is learning how to dream a little bit and having that clear picture about what that version looks like of yourself. And I like to do this with my clients is have them close their eyes and visualize what the best version of them looks like. And you can do this with me, but to close your eyes and think of what does healthy Liz look like? What does healthy Liz choose? What is she wearing? What does she feel like when she walks into a room? Who is she surrounding herself with? What is she reading? What is she watching? How is she spending her time? How is she feeling when she goes and exercises? And so that helps me so much that when I'm making a choice, like at a restaurant, what am I going to order? I actually visualize what does healthy Liz do? And I try to choose that. And so having that clear picture of what the best version of you looks like really does help you when you're making choices.
I love that, Liz. Who is healthy Liz hanging out with?
Hmm.
Like, congrats to the hundreds and hundreds of people that we have on tonight because you're hanging out with the healthy community right now. And that is a good step in the right direction because we end up being like the people we hang out with most, right?
Exactly.
So true. Or when you're going to a restaurant, who are you going with? Are you going with people who are going to, I don't know, nudge you to make good decisions or healthy decisions or, I don't know. It's just like that whole visualization. Like, how does your entire environment play out in the healthiest version of you?
Yeah, I actually heard a study about that, how yes, we become like the people that we're around. And if we're around people that drag us down or take us in the opposite direction, it actually has a greater effect on us than positive people. So really be mindful about who you surround yourself with, not just your best friends, but even who is in a 25 yard radius of you can affect your energy also.
Yeah, it's crazy. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the failure success scale right now. So Dr. A talks about this in the life book, that this is what a lot of people think of when they're talking about being successful in life, right? And this is just one of the axes. So this is like the external financial success. This might be like your status, your house, your car, your job. Um, but another part of that is just this question. Do you have the means to live the full life that you really desire? Because sometimes people will downplay finances a lot, or they will upplay it. Like, oh, finances are everything, and I need the car and the house. And then some people are like, oh no, like I don't need any money, and money's bad. And it's so funny to see the extremes. And when it comes down to it, the failure to success scale, it's just one portion of the entire well-being. And it is part of life, right? Having the means to be able to live the full life that you desire. Now, when we base all of our success scale just on this, that's where we start to get into trouble, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's so many aspects to it. And one thing that helps me when I think about where I am on this scale is a 10 would be the best version of me. So I'm not comparing it to the best version that ever existed, but the best version of me where I want to be. So in regards to finances, maybe, I mean, you're not comparing yourself to Elon Musk, for example, but the best version of you where you ideally want to be, that's a good place to gauge that. So sometimes, that we underestimate our potential or sometimes we overestimate it. So thinking about where I am in comparison to the best version of you, and then thinking about, okay, how can I move? If I'm a 4, how can I move to a 5? Not just to a 10 overnight, but how can I baby step forward on that scale?
Yeah, and asking yourself, am I in the comparison game or the creation game?
Hmm.
Like, am I just comparing, well, I have a good as car as my neighbor, or, at least I don't have as much debt as my brother, whatever. I don't know how much debt my
Yeah.
brother has, but
And you can relate it to not just money, but your health too, your relationships, all aspects of your life as far as failure and success.
yeah. So let's talk about the other axes. So how many of you are math nerds? You got the X and the Y, right? But the fulfillment depression scale is the other portion of this that a lot of people forget about. So this is like your purpose. Do you have a solid purpose? Do you have solid direction? Like I am on the road to my best self, and this is what it looks like. This is what Liz was talking about, visualizing. Are your days filled with things that you love? Are you constantly just like wishing that it was the weekend until Sunday night rolls along and you are just so stressed out that the next day's Monday, right? Or do you have meaningful connection? Like how are your connections with your family, with your friends? Are you growing? Are you in that growth mindset? So this is the other axis of it that a lot of people don't think about when they're talking about well-being or success in their life. And so I love what you said, Liz, of just kind of like deciding where you're at, like 1 to 10. Where am I at on that fulfillment depression scale? Where 1 is like, I just barely can't even drag myself out of bed. Like, I don't have any direction in my life. I don't have any meaningful connections. And 10 is like that very best version that Liz was talking about, that you visualized it and you were there. And so, with both of those skills, I hope you took a minute to kind of decide where you were at 1 through 10 on failure to success, and then 1 through 10 on fulfillment to depression. And once you decide where you're at on each one of those, then you can see which quadrant that your current reality is right now. So, for example, let's say you were a 6 or a 7 on the success side, and then you were a 7 on the fulfillment. Okay, well, you're in the upper right quadrant, thriving, fulfilled, and successful. That's a great place to be. And yeah, we can always improve, we can always set new goals, but that's a pretty great place that you're feeling fulfilled and also having the means to be able to live your life full out. Now, if you go down to the lower right quadrant, maybe you're successful financially, maybe you have the car and the house and the boats and whatever, but you're depressed. You're worn out. You aren't feeling those deep connections. You aren't having the time to do what you want in your life. I think
You're
there's
not
a
excited to wake up in the morning.
yeah, there's a lot of people probably are in that lower right who are in like high power jobs and things like that, right? And then if you look at the lower left, this is like you got no money, you got no friends. It's a sad place to be. And then the upper left is, maybe you aren't succeeding financially or that status or the things like that, but you have deep connections in your life and you have those relationships. It's the contented, the fulfilled but failing. And, Dr. A talks about his own story with the well-being chart here. How, he was in the upper right when he was that critical care physician. He was making tons of money when he was single and he was saving lots of lives, and it was very fulfilling. But then he got married and started having children, and he was making all that money. He went down to that lower right. he was worn out. He was making lots of money, but he didn't have that time with his wife and his kids. And he started feeling like, what's this all about that I'm just spending 80 hours at the hospital? And so he made a decision to quit critical care and actually start what's now Optavia. And everyone's like, you're crazy. You know, he moved to Oregon from Ohio and had his little Porsche and lived on credit cards for a few years and started spreading the news of optimal health and really starting to make a big difference in people's lives. So then he moved over to the upper left, the contented. He was fulfilled, but still not quite making money yet. And after he got Optavia going in the right direction, then right back over to thriving, fulfilled, and successful again. And so these are things that you're not just stuck. You're not stuck in one place where you're never going to move. Different decisions that we make, different choices that move our life direction in one way or the other. These are all things that can be moved, can be changed.
Yeah, and I think he was willing to get out of his comfort zone. And that's what it takes. You know, they say that growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. And Dr. A had to get out of his comfort zone. He had to give up material possessions and success and take a chance and be able to move from one quadrant to the other to really create what he wanted. And we are so grateful that he did that.
100%. Well, Liz, I would love for you to share a little bit about your story in this area and how like what you've gone through with your journey in Optavia.
Oh, yes. I love sharing my story because I've jumped through the house, the different houses so often that it's kind of fun to look back. But when I started my health journey about 13 years ago, I really did feel like I was in the broken house. I thought my body was broken. I had 6 babies, just kind of that yo-yo cycle of gaining weight, trying to lose it. And the older I got, the harder it was. I felt like I was tired all the time, addicted to sugar, my body hurt. And it wasn't just physically, my finances, that was a stress. My relationships, just because I didn't feel confident or didn't want to get out and play with my kids. And so thankful for you, Amber and Jared, for sharing the program with me and, finding Optavia. I was able to get to a place that I never thought I could be with my health. So I lost 45 pounds. I did the nursing moms program and I felt amazing. I'd been lower on the scale than I had since high school. And I felt like I was in the dream house for a while, like it felt like I'd arrived. But I noticed that the longer I stayed there, the easier it was to kind of slip back. I just kind of felt stuck. Like, what's next? I didn't want to just focus on trying to keep the scale steady and not gaining it back. And so a few years ago, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on being strong and just focus on being healthy. And that's where it really started to get fun. I started working out at the gym. I love the active products, started using my essential amino acids and the protein powders, and what a difference that made with being able to see change, build muscle. And so, so often that happens when we reach our goal. We feel like we crossed the finish line, but we forget that there's not a finish line to health. We always have something that has to move us forward. So if you're on your health journey, yes, get to that finish line and celebrate, but always have your next goal in line. Always think about what's going to keep moving me forward, and that's how we keep moving towards success. We never get comfortable in that fine house. It's always pushing us to be a little bit better.
I love that, Liz. And it's just a good reminder, to assess where you're at and be like, well, where could I go? What could I accomplish? And that is sometimes the thing that helps you move forward. So in element 22, Dr. A talks about like, well, what if you're feeling stuck? And he gives some really good suggestions. And I looked at these and I was like, yes, these are all shift moves. Jim Dethmer talks about when you are below the line and you decide that you go, yep, I'm here below the line. Then sometimes you need a shift move in order to shift above the line to get into that growth and that creation spot. And here's some ideas for you. So maybe follow your passion. Like, what is it in your ideal life, what would be your passion that you would want to follow? I love this. Rekindle or find romance. And he said, you know, maybe you're already married, but you're not like having the best romance ever. He's like, call a truce. I love that. He's like, call a truce and rekindle your romance. Take up a new hobby. Have you always been wanting to learn how to play the guitar or take up pickleball? I highly recommend pickleball. Um, Liz, talk to us about your walks.
My walks, well, I don't know what you're referring to, but I love to walk. I have a dog and we go out walking every morning and it's just part of my routine. Rain or shine, I'll be covered in snow. It doesn't matter. I just learned to dress warm, but it becomes just part of who I am. And, you know, another one you have on there is start a business. That honestly is the thing that's kept me moving forward is that decision to become a coach. I wanted it to become part of who I was, my identity. I knew that it would be so much harder to move backwards if I was helping others move forward and I was in this community for the long run. So I just remember how excited I was when I started coaching. I had a hard time sleeping. I was excited to talk to my clients. I was excited to get those texts from clients having success. And so that was a great thing for me and a blessing in my life is being able to not just get healthy, but also financially healthy too, and help others do the same thing.
100%, Liz. You know, there is something really great about when you've been coaching for several years and you start like dreaming, like you're like calling clients in your dreams, you're thinking of ways you can talk about health with people, you're presenting in your sleep. Definitely Liz and I are probably at that
Yeah.
that spot as well as Amy. But just kind of thinking overall with this element 22, like where you're at with your well-being, and if you are feeling stuck, what could shift you? And on both of those axes, if you're feeling stuck in your finances, what could you do? Maybe you would want to look into becoming a coach. I know that that helped my finances take a 180-degree shift from where we were at broke and broken starting in Optavia to thriving in all areas, healthy body, healthy mind, and healthy finances. And that is because of the skills and the community and also the opportunity that Optavia brought into our life. So thanks everyone for being on, learning a little bit more about well-being, and I'm going to kick it back over to Amy.
Uh, Ladies, that was so amazing. I love the analogy of the houses, the broken, the fine, and the dream. And I think you do move through that. Like Liz, you were saying, there's not an end, right, to your journey. And the macro habits, right, of healthy surroundings, who we are around makes a huge difference. And you know, in that element, Dr. A talks about, are you happy? Are you doing what you really want? Are you financially successful? Can you do the things you want and have the things you want? And as you guys, the ladies were talking, you know, you get to rewrite your story. And the habits of health, the system comes in to help you rewrite that story. And that's what I loved about element 22. It just awakens you to where are you at on that scale. And as you even see with Dr. A, he was in different spots on that scale, but as he got around different community and he started pursuing what mattered most to him, he moved in those four corners too. So thank you so much. And we are going to, you know, kick it off next week. Everyone has been talking about the challenge. If you guys had done that last time, there's one coming in May. It is coming May 1st. There's going to be some information coming, and just connect with your coach, and they will let you know as the emails are coming out and how to get registered to do all those things. And then next week of Let's Talk is going to come back with the health professionals. The other time was really amazing, and we are super excited to do that again on April 28th. So thank you guys, and we will see you for next Monday for Let's Talk.